if you could do anything in the world and money was not an issue, what would you be doing? And oftentimes their answers don't, either it's, I don't know, or their answers don't align with what they're currently doing. I think it's a subtle way of getting people to think about what they're doing.
Self-awareness, because when you're young, you don't necessarily realize that you like or don't like what you're doing. But then 10, 15, 20 years into it, you realize that something it's not there.
That's very, very true. And then, you know, for many people, it can be hard to change because they're used to a certain lifestyle. And when you're starting over many times, you know, and I mean, maybe you're successful right off the bat, maybe you're not.
Hello, welcome back. This is Andreea Parc.
And Alexa Dumitru.
And this is Alive Again podcast, where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real choices and decisions that we make in life and how those affected our journeys. Today we have with us the lovely Deb Farkash, who is a entrepreneur, a wellness and beauty product marketing person. I'm going to let you explain exactly what you do. I'm so happy that you're here with us today, and we're grateful that you join us.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much for inviting me and having me here. I really feel very honored to be here today.
Thank you. We met at one of the events organized by the Three Tomatoes. And I was really happy and intrigued by your journey because you're living a healthy, balanced life, but it wasn't the same all along. So I wanted you to share your journey and your decisions that you had to make.
Well, thank you. So, you know, I loved what I did. I loved my first career. I spent 28 years as a recreation director, recreation therapist, working with the frail elderly, people with Alzheimer's and dementia, until the stress really made it impossible to continue. And and I needed a change. I knew I needed a change, but honestly, I looked into other careers and nothing really spoke to me. And in the end, unfortunately, I did burn out. And it was through that journey of regaining my health that I was open to considering a career in sales and marketing, because that was something very different from my career choice, you know. And I kind of fell into this because I had been working with my acupuncturist. And I had asked him, well, what else can I do? What else can I do for my health? And he had recommended some products. And, you know, I was very skeptical because I had taken different kinds of products here and there. I'd always been interested in health. And, you know, I mean, I was in the health field, right? So I was always interested in health. But whatever I had taken in the past never really worked for me. And a lot of times it even upset my stomach. But this time it was different. My energy had returned, my focus had sharpened, even my skin had gotten better. I had had eczema. You know, when you burn out, there's a lot of stress, and that impacts your body in so many different ways. We don't even realize it. I think that we're just now beginning to realize it. And, you know, when I realized that there was a whole career, an entrepreneurial track that I could follow, it just kind of it really made sense. You know, because what I realized I had in my hands was real solutions for people. And that allowed me to continue my passion for serving others. And it wasn't just in health, but skincare, beauty, even financial freedom. And that made a difference to me, and that's how I got started.
There is good news in this conversation that there is life after burnout,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that we all get stressed and we go through challenges and tough times in life,
Hmm.
but it's always a way out,
And
and we just have to find it.
that is the trick. It's finding the way out.
Yeah. So, what exactly do you do now?
So now I have a business in health and wellness. I'm an affiliate with a company that has really amazing products, both for internal health and external health. So that's part of also the balance you were talking about. And we use award-winning, innovative, patented technologies to develop these products. And a lot of my business is on social media. And a lot of it is also just meeting people, talking to people, and listening to people, and just being able to serve others.
Products, meaning supplements, and
Yes,
yes.
so supplements and skincare mostly is what I focus on. So supplements, to for all different parts of your body and just to put your body in balance, supplements that are not just nutritional, but we're talking about natural supplements.
And is it both for women and men? And I know that you've worked before with the Alzheimer's
Mhm.
patients. Do you have anything for the elderly as well?
So great question. Thank you. So, so supplements are for everyone, and so is skincare. I mean, everyone has skin. And it's true, women focus more on their skin, but do you know that 40% of men actually go to dermatologists for different kinds of dermatological interventions, whether it's Botox or fillers or, nips and tucks also. So men are also much more aware of their skin. I even got my husband to he's not very consistent, but I even got my husband to use some of our products. And so, but you asked about Alzheimer's. So there's two things. One is our focus really is in prevention. And and of course, it makes sense when you think about it, it is much easier to prevent than it is to reverse. That said, and because we are not a pharmaceutical company and I am not a doctor, even though I do have, you know, training in the health field, you don't have to have that training. We do get a lot of training, but I'm not a doctor and I don't want to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. What I will say is that you can always try something. It's not going to hurt anybody if somebody, but there's no guarantee that our products are going to reverse Alzheimer's. But what it will do, and I found this with myself, is that when I burnt out, I had trouble word finding, for example, and my memory and my focus was really not as sharp. And I got scared. I mean, you work with Alzheimer's people, you kind of see it around every corner. And I did find that taking these products did help to restore a lot of that functioning. So I think it couldn't hurt. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
Of course, supplements. I don't think that there is any supplement that could hurt.
no, that's actually not true.
No?
No, that is definitely a misnomer. Supplements are not necessarily pure and efficacious. And I think there's a lot of, there's no real regulations about how much of a product is really good. Some people feel like, oh, this worked for me, so let's try two more. It'll go faster, or it'll work better, whatever. And that can actually harm you.
Yeah.
So knowing how much your body really needs is very important. also you can also be stressing your organs, because if you're taking something that is too much or it's not good quality, your body's excreting that, and you could put a lot of strain on organs. So
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, people don't think about it. They just think, oh, my friend took it, it's really good, let's just try it.
That's true that what works for somebody else doesn't mean that works for all of us.
And one of the things that I really appreciated, especially having been in the health field and having had issues all my life, was the research, that is done with the products, you know, we have some of our products have been in R&D for over 7, 8, 9 years. They've gone through what's known as double-blind placebo studies, which are you familiar with that? So,
No.
so, so working with universities, a double-blind placebo study means that people don't know if they're taking the product or a placebo. And so then you can really test for, is it the placebo effect that people think that it's working, therefore it's working, or is it actually working? And
Yeah.
that's done with real research and real studies. So our products go through a very rigorous process of R&D.
What's the process like for somebody who wants to start a supplement, right? Because supplements are for to supplement what you're not getting from your nutrition, from your food, from going outside or whatever it may be. So what is that process like for somebody?
Well, yeah, and that's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. So there's a couple of things. One is talking to them and really listening to what is going on with somebody, what they're looking for, and also what are they willing to do. Some people, for example, will not swallow a pill. They've got, great intentions, but they won't swallow a pill. Some people, so, but you really have to listen to people. So that's number one, is listening to people, what it is that they need, what it is they're looking for, so that I can recommend a particular product. Is it an overall health product? Is it an overall nutritional supplement? Is it a specific supplement for something in particular? And then the other thing is that my company we have a piece of biotechnology that we use, not developed by us, but we put in over $1 billion and years of research in a product that uses Nobel Prize winning technology to read on the palm of your hand, so totally non-invasively, to read if the vitamins you take and the food that you're eating are being absorbed. Because taking a vitamin or eating food and not having it absorbed means you're just filling the toilet. And it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So it's also understanding that. And then we work together and I make some recommendations. People take things, we see how it's working. Is it working for them? Is it not? Of course, we do a baseline and then we do a follow-up scan in 90 days, because it does take time for for your body to absorb. It takes actually a month for your body to absorb at the skin level nutrients. So it may not take long in other parts of your body, but definitely at the skin level. And we do a baseline and then we do a test in 90 days. And my company actually gives a money back guarantee. So if you take one of our scanner certified products and your scan score does not go up, then they give you your money back. So that's kind of that is the proverbial put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to be in the medical and in the wellness profession? How did you start with doing this when you were young?
Well, I have a master's in recreation and rehabilitation therapy, And I have actually always been interested in both Eastern medicine and Western medicine. So, matter of fact, when I, as a recreation therapist, I brought my Tai Chi instructor in to work with the elderly. And I showed him how to adapt a lot of the Tai Chi positions and moves to work with the clients. And then, he took over and it was very, very successful. And years later, we've learned that there's a lot of actual research in Tai Chi and people, for example, with Parkinson's. So I've always had that in me. I've always had that I don't know, feeling, desire. I've taken different courses in healing and stuff. So I have a real appreciation for that. Always did.
Yeah.
Where did the recreational therapy passion come from?
I never knew that it was a field. And after high school, I did a gap year in Israel, and then I came back to New York thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And I was just doing some secretarial work, office administration, whatever you want to call it, at a place, and they offered interest testing. Because honestly, I had always thought I was going to go and become a psychologist, a child psychologist. I'd read Dibs in Search of Self. I don't know if you are familiar with that book, but I'd read it when I was a kid and it really impacted me. It was all about play therapy. And so I took the test. I took the test and it showed that, and it pointed me in this direction because I love dance, I love music, I love art, and this field enabled me to use that knowledge and skill and passion in working therapeutically with people. So that's how I kind of fell into how I decided to go into recreation therapy. And like I said, I did that for 28 years.
So if you loved dance and art and what made you not be a performer?
I never saw myself as a performer. I think believe it or not, I was very shy. And so I never, sometimes your parents pull you in front of all the guests and they say, sing this song or do this or whatever, and that was like, torture for me.
Recite a poem.
Yeah,
That was
whatever
the
it is. Yeah,
commitment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was like torture. So, I never saw myself as a performer, but I always enjoyed it. My father actually was an artist. So I knew I had an artistic talent but I never felt that I wanted to do, I never saw that as a profession. That was something that you do for you.
Yeah.
The reason why I ask is because it's been an ongoing theme in the most recent podcasts.
Mm.
And especially for people of my generation, it's, I'm at that age. I am very lucky that I did find my passion and my craft, but it's common among people of my age to not really know what they want to do. And it's really interesting to see how people get to their passions and to their work, because you kind of say, okay, I like art, I like dance, I like music, but that's not really what I want to do. I want to put it into a therapeutical sense. And it's really interesting to see how people get to where they get to.
Yeah, no, yes, it is. And I mean, now that I'm out and about in different fields, I have learned about so many different fields and backgrounds that people have that have done so many things that I really never knew about. So I think that is also, evolved. When I was growing up, you were a doctor, you were a nurse, you were a therapist, you had your own business, you were an attorney. You didn't really know about a lot of options.
These days, and you're right, we grew up with this idea that we need to call ourselves something, a certain profession. I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I think it's a lot connected to the image that we're creating about ourselves. And it's funny that when my dad in Romania asked me, so what exactly are you doing? So I told him I'm a mindset coach. And no, I told him I'm a coach. And he said, what sport? And I said, no, I'm a mindset coach. And I had to explain to him what that means. And he's like, so sort of a therapist? Yes, something similar to that, but on a different. It's interesting. Yes, you're right. It evolved and developed in so many areas that we can do these days.
And I think it's so much fun too, to have options, right?
True. And finding there is always a way to do something that you love and make money and have a good life on all the levels.
Absolutely. And I think that that is one of the biggest things that has changed, over the years. I mean, for example, also even just having more than one career. I was talking to my husband the other day, we were looking at your questions, so I was just kind of chatting with him. And I mean, he's been in one career his whole life. And it's very interesting because I said, well, how do so his father started a business in the garment industry more than, I think in the 1940s. So just like at the end of the or middle of the Depression. And my husband and his brother both went into the business. And my husband's real passion is history. He has a master's, he's really good in it. He said he thought about teaching and but realized that he wanted more in life, that teaching was nice, but it wasn't going to give him the financial freedom that he wanted. And he had a very good life at home. So he went into his parents' business and you know yeah, so but people have more options today that they don't always think about, but he's always done that. And I've asked him because he hasn't retired yet. He still loves what he does. He didn't realize how much he loved sales and working with people and connecting.
I think it means a lot for all of us to try things, because if you try things and you see that it's working or it's not working, you can just change course or tweak a little bit what you're doing, and you eventually get to a place where you like and you love and you make money in the same time. So, yeah. Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see how many people do things that they don't love. And I always ask in my personal life, I always ask my closest friends or whatever it may be, if you could do anything in the world and money was not an issue, what would you be doing? And oftentimes their answers don't, either it's, I don't know, or their answers don't align with what they're currently doing. And it's, I don't know, I think it's a subtle way of getting people to think about what they're doing.
Yeah. Awareness of self-awareness, because when you're young you don't necessarily realize that you like or don't like what you're doing, but then 10, 15, 20 years into it you realize that something it's not there.
That's very, very true. And then, for many people, it can be hard to change because they're used to a certain lifestyle. And when you're starting over many times, and I mean, maybe you're successful right off the bat, maybe you're not. Maybe you start off successful and then, but you mentioned something very interesting when you're asking people what do they, if they didn't think about money or, what would they do? And I often ask people the same question. And the truth is that a lot of people have forgotten how to dream. They've
Right.
they've had thoughts when they were younger of what they wanted or what they liked or what lit up their heart, and they've lost it for, whatever reasons. And
Yeah.
finding that way back is not easy.
Yeah. No, it's not. Starting over, and I speak from experience, it's not easy. It's not easy. I was forced to start over,
which in a way made it easier, I think.
which, right, it was kind of easier because I was already
Didn't have a choice to go back.
kicked off the hill,
Yeah.
so I had to learn how to
Yes.
fly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard. I'm thinking of people who who would be a choice to change and start over. And that definitely is, it's something that it's not easy.
And look, you're totally right, because I mean, even with myself, I burned out. I mean, there was a point I saw myself burning out for several years, and tried to go. I went back to school. I was going to look to get an MBA. I looked I talked to counselors to see about taking my expertise and my skills and using them in a different profession and doing other things, and none of it spoke to me. And in the end, I burnt out. I had no choice.
Yeah.
And that happens. I talk to people, they get fired or laid off. The economy is no longer booming in their area. So now I was just talking to somebody, they were talking about this new word that's being used called polywork. Basically, it's diversification. Many people have more than one source of income,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily the same thing. Many people who are in my who I work with, who are in my field, and like I said, who I work with, they are teachers and they're doing this on the side. We have doctors, and this is a side income. They are, but all different kinds of fields is my point here, and they're doing this on the side, and eventually they get to a point where they have a choice.
Yeah. Based on what they like and what works, what doesn't work. Like that saying, don't put all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah, exactly. And also we change.
Yeah.
Right? As we get older, we change. We're not that same person. Um,
Yes.
and we evolve. So as we evolve, it's not unusual to think that we will have other professions. I think people nowadays, it's very common to have two and even three professions.
At the same time. Yes, you're right. And now that we're approaching the end, it's that one question that I ask every guest. And that is, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
Oh, there are so many. Oh my God, you want one. Being with people, and around people, with people. I just came back from a retreat. We were in the Baltimore area, but on a farm, and there were probably about maybe about 200 people, and just celebrating together, being together, connecting, singing, dancing. It was that is very makes me feel very alive.
Connection.
Connection to people, yes.
Connection. That was a great conversation, a lot of insight. And I'm sure that a lot of people will relate to what we discussed because a lot of us go through changes in life. So thank you so much for being here with us. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you both very much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that perhaps this whole conversation will spark some interest in other people and maybe connect to them also.
Yeah. Of course, but tell our listeners where they can find you, and I will also link your information in the description of the video.
Probably the best place to connect to me is either by email, my name, Deb, D-E-B, and my last name, Farkash @gmail.com. So just the first three letters of my first name, my last name at Gmail is probably the best way to connect to me. And but make sure to say that you heard me on a live again podcast so that I know where people are coming from. So it's not some random thing. And I'll definitely be sure to get back to people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
so
our
much,
listeners,
Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you. Our listeners, thank you for listening. For more conversation and guests, please subscribe and follow us. We'll see you next week.